parade route. We're going to bring it through, and we're going to have T.C. Bush here sing us the national anthem. So if everybody would please stand up, take off your hats, and honor the flag.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave for the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much. As we said, this is our 67th show this year. Many of us have been here for a long time. I'm sure there's a lot of familiar faces in the crowd, and you'll probably, if you've been here before, recognize this first tractor coming through. This here is a 1918 Joe Dane. John Deere, originally, they were just making plows and pull-behind equipment, and then an executive, Joe Dane, had the bright idea, hey, we should probably make a tractor, because everybody else is starting to do it too. So they made this, and it's all-wheel drive. It is one of the only working models of this tractor left in the world, and it is owned by the Northern Illinois Steam and Power Club.
Anyhow, this engine coming up the lane here, this is a 20-horse Minneapolis steam traction engine. It's built in Hopkins, Minnesota. It is owned by the Peterson family out of Hampshire, Illinois. And for as long as we've been here as the Northern Illinois Steam Power Club, it has not missed a single show. It has been here for every reunion. A group of local farmers in 1955, they gathered in DeKalb and watched a film titled When Steam Was King, produced by the JIK Threshing Machine Company out of Racine, Wisconsin. It recounted the old-time threshermen and the brute labor that it would take to bring in wheat harvest every year, and they decided, well, hey, we've got these old engines still around, why don't we pull one out and we'll throw a little party, we'll do it for fun over a weekend. So this is the machine here that started what is now our 67th year. Looks like we got Danny Cork at the throttle today. Interesting to note about this engine is it's towing a water tender. It has a full bunker on the top and can hold water underneath it. This is for extra capacity. You can go a little further, do a little bit more work, and it supplements the reserves of fuel and water that are actually on the engine itself, so you can keep running while you take the wagon away, go replenish your supplies, and bring it back. Because every minute back in the day that the engines weren't running, you weren't making money. Any whistles, Danny? Any more? All right, thank you. Next up, we have a Frick Eclipse. This is an 8.5 by 10. Frick rated a little differently than other manufacturers. Instead of horsepower, they rated them in terms of the bore and stroke of the engine. So this has a bore of 8.5 inches and a stroke of 10 inches. This is one of two double-cylinder engines we have on the grounds this It is what's known as a double cycle, meaning that steam leaves the boiler, does one single batch of work in each cylinder before going and being exhausted out to the stack. It's pulling a matching Minneapolis threshing machine behind it. This is a very common sight you would have seen back at the turn of the century, just as often as you see tractors, plows, and combines in the countryside today. Owned by the Peterson family of Hampshire. Any whistles? Thank you. Next up we have an Ohio engine. This is a product of the A.Z. Baker Company of Swan, Ohio. This is a single-cylinder Uniflow engine. After Baker was an engineer before he was a farmer or a salesman, he was very, very interested in efficiency of engines. I won't endeavor to explain exactly what the Uniflow, how the Uniflow differs from some of the other engines here on the grounds, but it is perhaps the most efficient steam traction engine ever produced in the United States. Again, part of the Peterson collection from Hampshire with Les Peterson at the throttle. Any whistles? That's all right. Here we have the first of our 4 Huron engines at the ground. We're fortunate enough to have 4 of these in operation this weekend. This engine is owned by the, recently changed hands. It is being displayed in the memory of Neil Drummer. He owned the machine for 52 years, was born, the story goes, when full smoke was rolling into the farmhouse and they were bringing in the wheat crop. It is a 19 and 65 horsepower Port Huron Longfellow. Any whistle? Thanks for bringing it through. What they would do was steam would leave the boiler, enter the small cylinder, and once it was done in there, it would be exhausted into the larger cylinder, do a second batch of work for free, in essence, before it was exhausted out of the stack. This engine coming up the lane now, this is another one of our 19-horse Port Hurons. Earlier I mentioned that these have 2 horsepower ratings, a 19 and a 65. The 19 is in reference to the boiler horsepower, which is related to heating surface, the steaming ability of the boiler. The other one, the 65, is what the engine produces off the belt pulley flywheel on the grandstand side of the parade route. This machine is fresh out of a restoration. This is the first showing of this particular engine since the early 1990s. It's owned by Tom Runty of Sycamore Illinois. It was built in 1921 by the Port Huron Engine and Pressure Company, Port Huron, Michigan, just across the St. Clair River from Sarnia, Ontario. This machine was sold to a gentleman by the name of John Strupp in 1921, and he was so impressed with the performance of his new machine that he wrote a testimonial to Port Huron, and they featured this engine with a photograph in their 1921 sales literature. We got Andy at the throttle today. Single-cylinder engine, sometimes it's difficult to get them running quickly in the direction you want because there's a top and a bottom dead center on the crank. So if you get it close to the top or bottom dead center, the engine's not going to move. So it takes a little bit of fine skill.
These guys are going the wrong way. This is another 1913 Port Huron. It's a 1965 also. This is also Thomas Runty's out of Maple Park, Illinois.
We got Jack Stuffle at the throttle today, and I asked him to bring the engine through backwards so everyone on the bleachers side can see what I was talking about with the tandem compound design. Again, there's only one connection to the crankshaft, but you have 2 cylinders. The high pressure small diameter one and the low pressure larger cylinder. Again, the steam leaves at full boiler pressure into the small one, does its work, loses a little bit of heat energy, is exhausted into the larger one before it ultimately is exhausted out of the engine as an efficiency fuel saver. Well, thanks for bringing it through, Jack. Once you get it started, I'm sure you have at least one whistle up there. thank you. This is a wonderful example of the dead centering I was just referring to. So right now it looks like the engine is on bottom dead center. You have to get off, rotate the engine to where it'll have a better mechanical advantage to get started before once again resuming motion. That was a big selling point of the double cylinder engines like the Frick we saw earlier. You never would have to do that. Wherever the engine stopped, it would be in a place where you could get it to run again. Alright, next up we have the Druid family's 50 horsepower case. This is a product of 1914, built by the J.I. Case Threshing Machine Company out of Racine, Wisconsin. Case was the most prolific manufacturer of steam traction engines during the age of steam on the American farm, and this is one of their more popular models. It's a good mid-sized machine, well suited for belt work off of the belt pulley, or for drawbar work. And they would find all kinds of creative uses for these, for both applications. You could run sawmills, threshing machines, rock crushers, you could pull a road grader, run a plow, move a house even. There's old photographs of people moving the pole side, being towed by one of these machines. An interesting note of this machine, it features a canopy. That was an additional cost from the factory, and it has the happy side effect of sheltering the operator from the elements, but its main function is to protect the expensive engine mounted on top of the boiler from the elements. Again, owned by the Druin family, with the whole family up there, Austin, Grace, and their son, Warren. Sorry, there's a lot of names to remember. Any whistles? Alright, thanks for bringing it through. Here we have our second double-cylinder engine on the grounds. This is a product of the Keck Garnerman Threshing Machine Company out of Mount Vernon, Indiana. Note, this machine is equipped with 2 flywheels, so it had extra stored momentum in addition to the double-cylinder design. Just like the Frick, this is a double simple, meaning that the steam leaves the boiler, does one batch of work in each cylinder before being exhausted out the stack. I had mentioned that being able to run the machine on the reserves of water and fuel it can carry is important when you were using these for a living. This machine is equipped with dual side tanks for extra water capacity, so it can hold a little bit more water, run a little bit longer. Owned by the Staleys out of DeKalb, Illinois. Any whistles? Thanks, guys. Here we have a Buffalo Springfield steamroller. This is the only operational steamroller in the state of Illinois. It's built in 1923 in Springfield, Ohio. Part of the Drew family collection here. It features a vertical boiler. All the boilers you guys have seen so far are horizontal locomotive-style boilers. This one's just a little bit different. These were popular in construction applications because it's a slightly more compact design. These really began springing up during the period in American history when we were starting to improve our roads in a big way. When the Model T became successful and automobile manufacturers really started producing a large number of cars, everyone came to the realization that the nation's dirt roads, you don't even want to call it infrastructure, it doesn't deserve that title, were not up to the job. So just like the Buffalo Springfield made the first paved roads in the United States. Any whistles, guys? All right, thank you. This is a very special machine here, this next traction engine for the show here in Sycamore. It's a product of the Illinois Pressure Company right here in Sycamore. If any of you are familiar with the layout of downtown Sycamore, on Park Avenue you have the Bloom and Gardens buildings. That is the remains of the factory where this machine was produced. It's quite rare. They only managed to make 63 before going belly up in the mid-1920s. This is one of the newer, or the first ones they produced, serial number 110. They began with number 100, so it's the 10th produced, and it is the only remaining 22 horsepower Illinois engine left in the world. There's 6 total, 225s, 320s, and again, this is the only remaining 22 horse. Owned, restored, and operated by members of the Northern Illinois Steam Power Club. We've got Hayden Schott at the throttle. Any whistles? first one we saw owned by the Petersons. That's because in Hopkins, the Minneapolis company factory was located right next to an art college. And they would hire students from the art college to paint and pinstripe their engines. So no two Minneapolises will appear identical in a cosmetic way. This is a 24-horse model owned by the Luton's family of West Chicago. Penny whistle. All right, thank you guys. Another indicative feature of Minneapolis engines, another bit for added water capacity when you were out in the field working, is the large head tank in front of the smokestack. That's again for added water capacity. It just gives you a little bit longer you can run between the water wagon bringing you fuel or extra water. This next machine here, this is a 1922, another 20-horse Minneapolis owned by the Hendrickson family of Edgerton, Wisconsin. An interesting feature of this machine, in addition to the head water tank, is the spark arrestor on top of the stack. When you were in a dry wheat field, bringing in the crop, the last thing you wanted was a spark to get shot out of the engine, because these do burn solid fuel, coal, and wood. And light the field on fire with your expensive steam engine and threshing machine out there. It's a very expensive problem to have. The solution to that is quite elegant and simple. Just a simple mesh screen on top of the stack, sequesters sparks inside the machine before they can be emitted into the atmosphere. The Hendrickson family, they are very heavily involved. Clayton is actually the caretaker of the Rock River Threshery. They are a sister show in Edgerton, Wisconsin, and their event is coming up over Labor Day weekend. If you like what you see here on the Taylor Marshall Farm today, you love the Rock River Threshery coming up Labor Day weekend. Any whistles, guys? All right, thank you. Here we have a 18-horse Advance Rumley. This is part of the Advance Rumley Company's universal line of traction engines, owned by the Walsh family out of Wisconsin. Arguably, the Advance Rumley Company was the second most prolific manufacturer of traction engines like this during the age of steam, and the 18 was one of their more popular models. Again, just like the 50-horse case we saw earlier, it's a big medium, and is well suited for both drawbar and belt pulley work. Being operated by Reese Baker today. Any whistles? He says it doesn't work. All right, thank you. Like I mentioned earlier, Case was king when it came to steam on the American farm, and this was their most popular model. This is a 65-horsepower Case, owned by the Hubbard family of Sycamore, Illinois.
That's one of the big wheels coming right after
today. Note again, this machine's equipped with the spark arrestor to prevent starting the countryside on fire. Another interesting feature you may be wondering about on these machines are the spinning balls on top of the cylinder. That is the engine's governor. As the engine speeds up, centrifugal force moves those balls further apart, pushes down on a valve that regulates the speed of the engine. Any whistles? It had to clear its throat at some point. Thank you. That's in memory of Phil Palzinski, a former director of ours who is unfortunately no longer with us. Thanks for bringing it through, Charlie. At the same time they were building steam traction engines for the American farm, there was a growing movement away from that power source. This is one such machine from the gorgeous nightmare period of American tractor design. It is a 3060 Altman Taylor, built 1924, owned by Steve Green of Pearl City, Illinois. And this was really, again, the first step in the evolution away from steam on the American farm. It came before a time when they had perfected the design of small tractors that could do the work of 2 or 3 horses, which was most common for small-time American farmers. The big Altman Taylors were great for large farms that had a lot of work to do, but it wasn't until Henry Ford, John Deere, and the International Harvester Company settled on a smaller design in competition with each other
Who's
In
coming?
1928, it is a 40 and 62
He's got it going.
horsepower rating, owned by the Linker family of Walden. And again, indicative of the transition away from steam that has large steel drive wheels, a big cast iron flywheel. Just a big, expensive, heavy machine. But as you can see, it's a step closer to the small farm tractors we know today when you compare it to the Altman Taylor 3060. Here, I think this is our last engine. They only built so many full-size steam traction engines during the age of steam, and that just isn't enough for people like us who want to show them and demonstrate them for the public. So a lot of people came up with kits and scale models. This is Kevin Malzinski's half-scale 65 horsepower case. Kevin's had this engine for about 2 years. We actually just finished putting the boiler jacket on it, that silvery steel part on the barrel of the boiler this morning. That was a bit to insulate the boiler and again, increase your fuel efficiency. Any whistles, Kevin? All right, thank you. Here we have another rumbling oil pull. This is a Model H from 1920. A little smaller. This is a 16 and 30 horse, owned by the Hoffmans of McHenry.
Oh, this
Oil pools are called as such because they use oil-cooled engines. Now now we're getting into regular tractors here. This is a 1940 International Farmall Super H. This is William and H. Now this is William Eschbach out of Marengo, Illinois. Pulling behind a 1952 Vermeer Model 12 trencher. You would use this to lay down tile in your fields to drain water away from certain spots. Here we've got a Farmall Super H. Farmall International called their tractors Farmall because they claimed that they could do it all. They're great row crop tractors, and they could do just about anything that you needed to. They aim to be about a medium-sized tractor for medium-sized farms. Here we've got an Oliver 88. A Soup. It's a 1957. These Super 88s were very popular among tractor pulls back in the day. That is Rod Miller's out of Hampshire, Illinois, and it's a row crop standard. Here we have a 1954 Farmall Super MTA diesel. This is Dan Wells out of DeKalb, Illinois. That MTA is a torque amplifier. Here we have a John Deere B. It's a 1950. It's a late style, and this is the Del Swansons out of Sycamore, Illinois. The B was one of the most popular early John Deere tractors. Here's a 1929 case owned by Julie Mates. Here we have a 1949 Farmall M. This is Moni Rain Gales out of Kingston, Illinois. This was originally belonged to Butch Mapes. These are made from 1939 to 1952, I believe. Here we have a 1947 Case BAC. This is Jason Mapes out of Marengo, Illinois. This runs on kerosene.
Next up, we have the end product of what is now known as the tractor wars I was referring to earlier. This is ultimately what made the horse on the American farm obsolete. A small, powerful, affordable tractor. Farmall regular built in 1929. And a similar Farmall F12, just a little bit smaller, but again from the time period. This is from 1936, owned by the Garants of Campton Hills.
Here we have an Alice Chalmers WC. Little known fact, Alice Chalmers, one of the first companies to put pneumatic tires on their tractors. This Alice Chalmers WC is one of their earlier models. Here we have a 1956 John Deere 70. This is Jim Bodie's out of Sycamore, Illinois, owned with Jason Erickson. Jason Erickson. In the 50s, John Deere made a whole series of double-digit tractors, the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Here's the 1952 John Deere R. This is James Bodie's out of Sycamore, Illinois. And here is the R's little brother, the 1951 John Deere AR. Also James Bodie's out of Sycamore, Illinois. Beautiful restoration job done on this. Here we have a 1944 Model BR. Jennifer Bodie's out of Sycamore, Illinois. Here we have a 1946 John Deere Model H. Iris Sweetberg out of Sycamore, Illinois. Sweetberg? Even an earlier model than that. This is a 1935 John Deere B, owned by Mike Bodie out of Sycamore, Illinois. Cheap for general purpose. These tractors were made to be as utilitarian and easy to work on as possible. Tell the whole family behind. Here we have a 1943 Farmall H. This is Rob Ryans out of Hampshire, Illinois, local from Burlington. Long-time club member. Here we have a 1946 John Deere B, 4147. Again, those are horsepower numbers. This is a Styles 6-speed, owned by Steve Thoreau out of Garden Prairie, Illinois. Glad to see you in the driver's seat. Next tractor has a lot of what we lovingly call patina. This is a 1953 John Deere 50, Gary Pitts out of Chicago, Illinois. This tractor looks heroic. It has done a lot of work, and you gotta love it. All original parts on that. That is very rare. Here we got a Farmall Super M. The 1954, and it's Jim Quinn out of Clare, Illinois. Here we have another unstyled 1937 John Deere B, general purpose. This is Dennis Shanks out of Elburn, Illinois, local. Beautiful restoration job on that. Minneapolis eventually did move on from making steam engines to making regular tractors. They paired up with another company, became Minneapolis Moline. This is a 1949 Minneapolis Moline ZAU. This is Larry Warrington's out of Hampshire, Illinois. 1950 tins. This is for sale if anybody's looking for a tractor. These Minneapolis Molines are very interesting. Minneapolis wanted to make them as easy to work on as possible, so they moved certain parts around in the engine and set things sideways so that farmers could get to it a little bit easier. Here's another Alice Chalmers. This is the WD 45. This is Chris Flakes out of DeKalb, Illinois. As we got towards the 60s, John Deere started making bigger and bigger tractors. This is one of the examples of that. This is a John Deere 830 diesel. It's a 1959. This is Nick Rivera out of Gilbert, Illinois. Here we have a 1969 International 856. This is Kevin Parnell out of Oshkosh, Wisconsin. Owned by Frank Hartman of Maple Park, Illinois. Here we have 1949 Farmall M. Anthony McKenzie Parnell out of Elburn, Illinois. Showing something else interesting looking behind it. Not towing. Just so close it looked like it was towing. This is a Massey Harris 44 SPD. These tractors that we have coming along here, these 63. These are mini replicas, sort of like the mini replica that you saw the steam engine come through. These are half-scale replicas of full-size tractors. The first one is a Alice Chalmers WD-45 half-scale. All of these owned by the Richardson family out of Marengo, Illinois. Behind it, we got a Ford 8N, 1952. Angie Richardson out of Marengo. And behind that, a McCormick Farmall W6 Standard. Ray Richardson out of Marengo, Illinois. The 1940 John Deere B. This is Terry Blake out of McHenry. In the 40s, as you know, we were in World War II. Tractor manufacturers had to make tractors that were a little bit smaller. This is a 1942 John Deere LA from Gordon Bruckner out of Sycamore, Illinois. And behind it is an International 184 diesel. It's a 1979. That's Gordon Bruckner out of Sycamore. Here we have an Alice Chalmers CA. It's a 1952. Has a whole plow kit on it and everything. Looks like I still get some work done too.